It is 4:47 in the morning. Rancher Dale Pruitt is standing at the edge of his south pasture in Hollow Creek, Texas. He has his flashlight. He has his boots. He does not have an explanation. 3 of his cattle are on the ground, arranged, not fallen, arranged. Each one positioned at an equal distance from the others, forming a triangle so precise that, when measured later, the margin of error was less than 2 inches. No blood on the grass, no blood on the animals, no tracks in the dried clay, not from a vehicle, not from boots, not from anything that walks. Dale Pruitt is 61 years old. He has worked this land his entire life. He has seen drought, disease, lightning strikes, and coyote damage. He has never, in 61 years, been afraid to walk his own property at night. He is afraid now. Welcome to the faint whisper, where the story never ends. It echoes.
Authorities in Reeves County are looking into reports of unexplained livestock deaths near the unincorporated.
Dale Pruitt checked his cattle every morning at first light. That was the routine. And routine was the architecture of his life out there on Route 9, 40 miles from the nearest town worth naming. On the morning of October 3rd, he noticed the gate to his south pasture was closed, latched, exactly the way he had left it the night before. That detail would matter later. He counted the cattle from the fence line. It was habit. 11 animals. He counted 8 standing. Then he saw the 3 on the ground, and he stopped moving entirely. Even from 40 feet away, something registered as wrong before his mind could name it. Not just that they were down, it was the spacing, the symmetry, the way the bodies formed a shape that no living creature falls into by accident. He climbed through the fence. He walked toward them slowly. All 3 were on their sides, legs folded, not splayed, heads turned inward, each one facing the center of the triangle, eyes open, mouths closed, and dry. Dale pressed his hand to the ground near the nearest animal, looking for moisture, for the pooling that always comes. There was nothing. The grass beneath each body was undisturbed, flattened slightly from the weight, but not torn, not compressed the way ground gets when something heavy is dragged or dropped. They had been placed. That was the only word that fit. He called his neighbor, Roy Esparza, at 5:10 a.m. Roy arrived 20 minutes later, looked at the pasture, and said nothing for a full 2 minutes. Then Roy said, "Dale, get your tape measure." The distance between each animal, point to point, was exactly 31 feet and 4 inches. 3 times. The Reeves County Sheriff's deputy who responded was a man named Calder. He took photographs. He walked the fence line. He looked at the ground the way someone looks at something they have already decided they understand. He told Dale it was likely a predator kill, possibly followed by scavengers repositioning the remains. Dale asked him to point to the tracks. Deputy Calder could not point to the tracks. He told Dale it was possible the ground was too hard for impressions. October in West Texas, the clay can bake solid. He told Dale he would file a report and send it to the Agricultural Extension Office. He told Dale to contact his insurance carrier. Then he left. The Extension Office sent a field agent 4 days later. The agent collected tissue samples and noted in his written report, a copy of which Dale obtained through a public records request, that the animals showed, quote, no evidence of hemorrhage, no sign of predator activity, and an unusual absence of post-mortem insect activity consistent with the time of death. That last part, an unusual absence of insect activity. The agent filed his report. No follow-up was scheduled. Dale kept the copy of that report in a kitchen drawer. He read it often. It happened again on October 17th. 2 more cattle, same pasture, same geometry. This time, a straight line. 2 animals, exactly 40 feet apart, each one perpendicular to the fence line, as though placed along an invisible ruler. And this time, Dale had left a trail camera mounted on a fence post overlooking the south pasture. He retrieved the SD card at first light. He sat down at his kitchen table with a cup of coffee and watched the footage on his laptop. The camera recorded in 30-second motion-triggered intervals. At 11:42 p.m., both animals were standing, visible, healthy, moving near the water trough. At 11:43 p.m., the camera triggered again. Both animals were on the ground, in position, already arranged. 30 seconds. Dale watched the clip 11 times. There was no light anomaly, no blur, no indication the file had been corrupted or the timestamp falsified. The camera had simply recorded, standing, then down, with a gap of 30 seconds between them. He called Roy again. Roy came over. Roy watched the clip. Roy said very quietly, "Dale, that's not possible." Dale said, "I know." Outside, the south pasture was silent. Roy Esparza was not a man given to speculation. He was a former electrician, practical and literal, the kind of man who trusted what he could measure. But Roy had been noticing something for the past 2 weeks, since just before the first incident. His radio, an old AM set he kept in the barn for company while he worked, had been picking up interference. Not static exactly, a tone, a repeating tone, just barely above the threshold of hearing, cycling every few seconds. He had checked the antenna, he had checked the wiring, he had driven to Pecos and bought a new unit. The new unit picked up the same tone. He pulled out his old electrician's equipment and used a signal meter to try to locate the source. The signal was strongest, he discovered, when he stood near the southeast corner of his property, which shared a fence line with Dale's south pasture. He did not mention this to Dale at first. He was not sure what to say. But on the night of October 20th, Roy walked out to that corner of his property with a flashlight and his signal meter. The meter spiked. And then Roy heard it without the equipment. Not in the air, or not only in the air. He described it later as feeling like a sound that came from below the ground and above it simultaneously. A hum that seemed to vibrate in his molars. He stood there for approximately 10 seconds. Then every light in his barn went out. He walked home quickly. He did not run. Roy Esparza was not a man who ran from things. But he walked home quickly, and he did not look back. Roy's dog was a cattle dog named Hector, 12 years old, gray around the muzzle, loyal in the way that only old working dogs are loyal. Hector had the run of both properties and was known to every fence post within a mile. On the night of October 23rd, Hector followed Roy out toward the southeast corner of the property. Roy stopped at the fence line. Hector did not. Roy called him back. Hector paused. Roy remembered this specifically, the pause, like the dog was listening to something, and then pushed through the gap in the fence wire and crossed into Dale's south pasture. Roy climbed through after him, calling his name. He found Hector's collar on the ground at the center of the south pasture. No clasp broken. No sign the collar had been pulled or slipped. It was simply there in the grass, as though set down carefully. Roy searched for 3 hours with a flashlight. He found nothing else. Dale helped him search the following morning, and the morning after that. They covered both properties and the scrubland beyond the back fence, nearly a mile in every direction. No tracks, no fur, no sign. Hector was gone as cleanly and completely as the blood from those first 3 cattle. It was a retired surveyor named Auguste Leo who first mapped it. Auguste lived 6 miles down Route 9 and had heard about Dale's situation through the particular social network of rural Texas counties, which is to say, he heard about it at the diner in Pecos. He drove out to see Dale, unannounced, with a topographic map printed on legal paper. He laid it on the kitchen table and pointed. The South Pasture sat at a specific GPS coordinate that Auguste had cross-referenced with 3 other reported incidents from the prior decade. Not cattle incidents, but other disappearances. A hunting dog gone in 2014. A trail horse that wandered off the Buckhorn property and was never recovered in 2018. A backpacker who went missing for 11 days in the wilderness preserve to the east before being found unharmed, but with no memory of the interval, in 2021. Each incident was located at the point of a larger triangle. When Auguste calculated the center of that triangle, it fell on an unremarkable patch of scrubland half a mile behind Dale's south fence line. Federal land, technically. BLM territory. Unincorporated, unnamed, unmarked. Dale had ridden through it 100 times. He had never once felt the need to stop. Auguste told him that was probably good. 3 weeks after Auguste Leal drew that map, the incidents stopped. No more cattle, no more signals. Roy bought another dog, and the new dog avoided the southeast corner of his property with an instinctive, specific certainty that Roy found instructive. Dale sold the South Pasture the following spring. The man who bought it asked why Dale was selling. Dale told him he was getting older, simplifying. The man nodded. Dale did not mention the cattle. He did not mention the geometry. He did not mention what happened to Hector. He told himself that was a reasonable choice. Here is what Dale Pruitt did not tell anyone until a phone interview conducted for this episode 9 months after the incidents ended. On the morning he first found the 3 cattle, before he called Roy, before he got his tape measure, before he understood what he was looking at, he had stood in the center of that triangle for a long moment, and he had heard it. Not with his ears exactly, in his molars, below the ground and above it simultaneously, just the way Roy had described. He had stood there for what he believed was a few seconds. When he looked down at his watch, 47 minutes had passed. He has no memory of those 47 minutes. He has never found a way to explain them. And on certain still nights, in the house he has lived in his whole life, he says he can still hear it, very faintly, just below the threshold of understanding. Hollow Creek is still there. Route 9 still runs past it. The South Pasture still sits behind a latched gate under an open Texas sky. Whatever arranged those cattle has not announced itself. It has not explained its geometry, its timing, or its silence. It has simply continued to exist in the space between what we can measure and what we cannot. If you are ever driving that part of West Texas late at night and your radio begins to drift, if the signal starts cycling in a tone you feel more than hear, keep driving. Don't pull over. Don't step out. Don't listen too carefully. Some frequencies are not meant to be tuned in. If this episode found you, you are already listening. Subscribe to The Faint Whisper. New episodes drop every week because out there, in the quiet places, the cases never close. They echo.